I am super excited to say that the only reason I am able to even come out with this episode is the sponsor of today's episode. So, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it is one of the greatest things to use to make a podcast. First, it's free. Second, they have all these tools that you can use to record, edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. I do it from my phone because it's much easier. I literally just bought one of those mics from the Apple store, plug it in, and now I just talk and it's great. Also, you can distribute the podcast wherever you want. Anchor does that for you. It can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I think Stitcher, so many other places. And you can make money from the podcast. And yeah, you can start it right away with an advertisement like this. So make sure you download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It is everything you need to make podcasts in one place. If you hear this disclaimer before the episode, it's because it was set to release a while ago. There were a lot of things that held me back, but I'm glad to be back on the right track now and producing content, hopefully at a very consistent weekly basis. So make sure you're tuning in every Wednesday to hear whatever episode of The Forensics Experience comes out.
What's up, everybody? It's Dante, aka the Forensics Guy, and you are listening to the Forensics Experience, the podcast where we discuss topics in the speech and debate community with the world's most influential coaches, students, and alumni in the activity. Today, I am very, very honored to be sitting with Katie Raphaelson. And Katie, feel free to tell the audience that's listening, just the couple people listening that don't know who you are, let them know who you are and what you do in the community.
Yeah, okay. So I'm Katie. I debated in high school for 4 years at Brentwood High School in California. I also debated in middle school, which was a wild time. I did Lincoln Douglas debate for all of high school. And I mainly specialized in writing arguments about disability studies, as well as making really performative arguments about my experience in debate, as well as arguments about queerness. And in my senior year, dabble a little bit within policymaking debate. Wild, I know. Yeah, my senior year, I guess like fun competitive things. I got 10th at NSDA Nats this year, which was really fun.
Awesome.
And I was a quarterfinalist at CHASA, and I got to 2 bid rounds, which was always fun. But yeah, and now I coach. Sporadically here and there, but I coach some pretty awesome kids, and yeah, having a good time.
That's amazing. You're obviously doing a lot of great things in the community, which is why I brought you here today. As some of you probably see looking at the title, we're talking a little bit about mental health in the speech and debate community. It's a topic that has yet to be talked about as much as it should be, unfortunately. And that's, for a few reasons. As we all know, in the speech and debate community, we can just admit that we're all kind of poor and have no money. And a lot of people typically think that it takes a lot of money to change things. But I definitely think that we'll be able to spark some conversations that could change some stuff that we could make relevant at tournaments without any dollars, hopefully in ways that, we'll be able to satisfy every single person in the community and make sure that speech and debate really is for all. I don't want to make it, something that seems exclusive to only the elite who are the best talkers in the world. I want every single child to have the opportunity to compete in something as amazing as speech and debate. So,
yeah.
My first question that I'm kind of looking at is, I guess the audience is probably curious, for both of us probably, what gives us, the right to have anything probably to say about mental health in the community? What experiences have you had and seen, like, in the community with mental health, and what things might personally affect you that are most prevalent to talk about?
Yeah. Well, I'd say on that first point, every single person, whether they want to think about it or not, is affected by mental health.
Okay.
So mental health in general a lot of the time, I actually went to there was a speaker on campus who talked about this. Basically, that mental health in general has to do with emotional wellness, and well, many different things. It can mean different things to everybody, but a lot of stuff such as self-care and making, because the world sucks
True.
for everyone in different ways, and all of these things can impact our mental health. So I know for me, so like I struggle with mental illness. I've got some not great things in my brain, and that impacts my mental health in a certain way. But there are some people who have other things that will impact their mental health. So I think like every single person in the world always have like the right to talk about this, and I think it's difficult also because of like certain community boundaries that can make it difficult to be open about this.
Yeah.
But I think that like, especially with in speech and debate, I mean, what I tried to do the most was try to create open discourses about how mental health is impacted through speech and debate, and especially through norms, through tournaments. And I think within the space, when we are given the opportunity, it is a fantastic thing to talk about, which is also why I'm like super happy that you're doing this episode. But yeah, so I think for me, my personal experiences have been, there's a lot, but I think, so like a lot of it has to do with just like how I'm as a person. So like I have a mood disorder and some not great depression and PTSD. And I think a lot of the stuff that happens with mental health in debate is, I know there's like some of the things where it's like, I've been to a tournament and Tab wasn't listening, and then they said that I had to forfeit a round because I wasn't there when I actually was. And there was a whole thing, and I'm having a panic attack on the floor,
Yeah.
and no one cares to investigate it until I'm crying. Or like, then there's some bigger ones where it comes to like, I have PTSD due to something from the community, and people who are at a tournament refuse to accommodate.
Yes.
And I think that there's like varying degrees, but there's also the degrees of like, you're debating someone and they have a new app and you had no idea and they lied to you about it, and you're just kind of in the dark and really confused. That affects your mental health.
Yeah, that is
or
true.
Yeah, and like if someone really quickly spreads through like some random paragraph theory argument and then you don't hear it and they go for it, that affects your mental health. And especially for people who have auditory processing disorders or other things that can impact that, it's not a great thing that our community seems to prize with and reward based on like the relentless what's the word like strategic value of it.
Yes, and I definitely, just quickly, I gotta switch gears to this because I think that this is one of the most important topics in the community, and I have been really adamant about this. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't wanna step on too many toes, but sorry for those whose toes have been stepped on. But I personally think that spreading in its essence is the most like I guess for lack of a better term, I'm going to say it is kind of like stupid. um
Yeah.
like there's no actual reason for it to be in debate as a whole. Especially when so many people might have speech impediments, or as you said, that I didn't even think of, auditory processing problems and a lot of other things like that. There's no reason that we need to basically have every single round be a Busta Rhymes rap concert. There's absolutely no reason, because now the specific debater may be affected, and I'm just usually, I try to be as calm about it as possible, but as a judge, I'm affected too when I'm sitting in a round and someone is speaking like 100, 200 miles an hour. It makes it difficult for me to be able to either read along, because nowadays LD is just a persuasive paper submission and I'm just reading for some
You're
reason
not wrong.
live.
That's so funny.
So so it's like it just turns into something that's so, I guess, like toxic for the community. Like there was a day when it was just common, normal speaking practices, and I understand where it came from. Somebody was trying to be clever and thought that, hey, if I can speak really fast and say 100, like different arguments, then your slower speaking can only hit 80 of them. So I automatically win 20 points, and that's not
Yeah.
necessarily how it works. If it was basketball, then sure, throw up a bunch of shots and just hope that a certain percentage of them goes in. But that's not the exact same case for how debate would work in this essence.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's definitely something that needs to change. I hope this podcast is definitely a call out to. I mean, there's a lot of people I need to call out to hopefully try to get that to change in the community. I think maybe along the lines of if two people specifically are able to, both understand each other and fit along with that flow, then that's fine. But there are going to be a lot of cases where that doesn't happen, and we have to be able to change the scope of how we debate to fit everyone in the community.
Yeah, definitely. And I think so like I was somebody who like I spread like all of my rounds from sophomore to senior year, and I think that does happen within the community norm. So like I came from a team that like we had institutional support and we were an established team and we had debaters who were doing well. And so we all just kind of conformed to what they did. And I am somebody who like this is kind of like I do kind of disagree in that like spreading for me I'm not mad at. And I think for me a lot of it is like the quote unquote game of debate has evolved. But I think that, I mean, if you, like, I know from, like, some of the, not like the origins, because obviously this isn't, like, the origin, but I remember there were, when I was learning about spreading, I would hear about these rounds where people would be spreading really fast. Then there was a debater who was really, like, there were debaters who would spread really fast. There was another debater who would just kind of more calmly speak, and he could get the exact same amount of things said, but just slower, and it was fine. And I think a lot of people are able to do that, and it's awesome. But I think a lot of debate now has just become a game, in my opinion, has just become a game of like who can and then secondary, who can read the most critical literature with buzzwords without explaining. And I think that that's what spreading also kind of allows is like I see myself when I'm doing prep is like I'm taking out the literal warrants in the card and just being like, this is a sentence.
Yeah.
Because it feels like it's becoming, and like it's really hard to escape that debate, especially like LD debate, because there's not, it's since the time difference, like it's so short.
Yeah.
That it just kind of becomes, I want to say as many things as possible. And it just becomes kind of a breadth over depth kind of thing. But I do think
that's fair.
Yeah, and I do think that like part of me, I think like that becomes one of the issues, and I feel like a compromise could be possible. I mean, I think that when people share the docs, that's awesome. You are right though, it is kind of just reading a research paper live, but like I think to me spreading, I don't know, it's just like a Katie thing, but I like the pace of it.
Okay.
Because it just makes the round feel more exciting to me, I guess.
I can see that. Okay.
Also because I'm also someone who naturally talks very fast, if you can't tell. And so for years, like again, just a Katie thing, for years people would be like, when I did middle school parliamentary debate, I would just kind of get roasted by everyone being like, Katie, you talk too fast. And then when I got to LD and I could spread, I was like, wow. So like I worked on spreading decently fast but very clear.
Yeah.
Big things is like making, if we're going to have spreading in the community, because I feel like it's inevitable that's going to happen at least for the next few years, that we have because I feel like there's I'll get into that, but I feel like at that point we should start prioritizing bringing back clarity into speech.
Yeah.
And like making sure however, I do understand a lot of the time how that has to do with like people with speech impediments. And I think that that's where it becomes kind of like an iffy thing, because you have people where, okay, I think overall my solution that I think of is that people just need to be nicer to each other. And that's kind of just my theme of everything I say about debate.
Yeah.
But I think that like when it comes to spreading, that like when we have these scenarios where people might have like a speech impediment, which can make spreading very ableist, in that scenario, if someone decides to spread, I feel like as a community, we can just be like, cool, let's figure this out. But I think also we just need to be more flexible when it's like, if someone wants to spread, cool. If someone doesn't want to spread, we can agree to have a round where there's no spreading. Because we don't want to have that one like asshole debater who spreads super fast against a kid who like isn't comfortable with spreading.
Yeah.
And then it means that these people who aren't part of these like super huge programs, who maybe are just transferring over from like doing lay debate or now doing circuit, are now like not thought of as good enough because only people who spread are thought of as good enough. Which I think is funny and is turning debate into a dystopian fantasy. But that's a whole other thing.
I think that's a really good point to talk about, is that it is like, even I can admit that spreading isn't necessarily the problem. The problem is that the reward that spreading gets, like,
exactly,
like in its essence, like the kid who spreads is pretty much 99.9% of the time going to beat the kid who doesn't spread, and that's problematic. Yeah. So if we can find a way to allow like a kid to totally do whatever feels comfortable for them, but still judge them in a way where we can see both styles as equal in each other's eyes, then we can basically hopefully give the right accolades to the right students who actually do the work and not just, fill the pews because it's a Busta Rhymes concert once again.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think also I had a really cool coach, Jackson Lawless. He had a thing in his paradigm once where he said, if someone wants to spread and someone else doesn't want to spread, I'll make it a slow round. And it was a nice bit, but it ended up happening a lot where people would just be like, I don't feel like spreading.
I like it.
And it was a big thing also that like, I've seen more people do this, but like, I guess people started using it as a quote unquote strategic move, in the sense, which I think is interesting, that against people who were like really, really hyped up, like really hyped up TOC debaters.
Yeah.
And people would just be like, okay, I don't want to spread, so that they couldn't spread. And then the rounds would somehow even out.
Man, I like it though. I can't deny that.
Like think about that. It's like, yeah, I think like, well, first of all, anything in debate is used in a strategic way.
Yeah.
I heard kids judged at trying to say who was more disabled than the other and trying to get me to vote off of that. And I was like, no, thanks. Not doing that.
Yeah, nope. I've totally seen that before.
Yeah. First, so uncomfy.
Like who's going to win this round of the oppression Olympics?
Exactly. And I'm like, that's why I put in my paradigm. I was like, please don't. People who are these days, now as a coach and a judge, people who have just started reading like disability literature and ableism arguments in front of me when they've never read it because like they think I don't know how to judge anything else. That's a pet peeve, baby.
I had a small period of that during one of my first paradigms where basically everybody would just switch. Yeah, there was in the past paradigm I had, I remember everybody just switching to doing performance.
Yeah.
Like everybody, like almost every single person. I was like, maybe I need to change this. Cause
yeah, no, exactly.
I do love performance, some good performance acts and stuff like that. But
yeah.
I want to, you see a variety too, and not, I don't know. It's such a weird thing. It's another question that I think we could kind of go down in a way because it stems somewhat towards the idea of like mental health and disabilities is the idea of paradigms as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
There's a part of me that wishes we lived in a utopia with no paradigms and everybody was given one way they should judge and then everybody just judged that way. Mm-hmm. As opposed to figuring out so many different ways of how to appeal to different people. And I don't know if that's a problem with the idea of paradigms itself. Maybe that's a problem with people writing more specific paradigms. Yeah. Maybe like more people should just write a paradigm that's very specific in exactly what is going to win in this essence. And then a student knows how to debate that. So it becomes its own like micro category.
Yeah.
Um,
I get that.
but I still don't. There's still a part of me that doesn't fully like the idea of a paradigm. But I mean, but it's so ingrained in culture that it is totally it's okay with me for now.
Yeah.
Until I think of something better.
I think my paradigm is very specific. She's funny. I worked on it for a long time, and it's been ever evolving from me being like, I don't like theory, to them me being like, I started debating in 2015. By the end of my first year, I'd memorized all the paradigm issues. I can't escape that part of my life. Because we need to call people out on things.
Yeah.
And like now I've noticed, I mean, in my old age of 18, I've noticed myself just shifting more and more towards like loving theory.
Yeah.
But that's just a weird thing. But I think on the paradigm thing, that was a little tangent, but on the paradigm thing, I think I, as a person, like as a debater, would not love a world in which everyone judged in one way. Because I think like that is I think that's why a lot of judges were putting like, I'd say I'm tabula rasa, but nobody is. And so here are my opinions.
Yeah.
Because like they're right. It's genuinely, if I were just to put like I'm tabula rasa, that's not true. There are arguments I don't like.
Yeah.
Like there are arguments where like if I were to say that and then like there are certain, like for me at least, like I don't want to hear arguments about like sexual assault because of my PTSD.
Yeah.
And like if I hear that, like I'd prefer not to have a panic attack in the room. Would strongly prefer that. But like I think a lot of the time it does create adaptability that I think is a pretty good quote unquote portable skill out of debate. Because like I think it allows us to learn how to adapt to what other people like I just like adapt to other types of argumentation or like
That's true.
Because like I know that me as a debater, I would not have gotten better if I hadn't like had so many varieties of judges. Because I mean, overall, judges also do act like they're very influential, and what we say in our RFDs are very influential.
Yeah.
And I think that like having like when I would be judged by like a policy debater versus like a person who's coached LD for 20 years versus a first year out, completely different, and teaches me 3 different ways to debate.
That's true. That's true. I will definitely agree with that, especially along the lines of coming back to the point of remembering that, even at the end of the day, the main purpose of this activity is for education.
Yes.
So we definitely need to continue to remember more ways to like persuade larger audiences, different people, stuff like that. I mean, because in this essence, debate is determined by the audience. Like that's how you win a debate. All the people that are watching and they vote. So they're definitely even if it was a debate outside of the scope of just three to five people in a room. If it was a larger kind of a county activity type of thing, then it would be a bunch of different paradigms in that room.
Yeah.
So you just need to figure out which ones you can best adhere to.
Yeah. And that's why I think like prefs, there are problems with prefs. And like we know, and I think policy debate has done way more when it comes to like talking about prefs.
Yeah.
With paradigms. But I think like it's a weird discussion, and I haven't really thought about it that much, but I think like that's the thought of how paradigms work. And then like if you like, I know people who would say like if they saw a paradigm where someone would say that they didn't like K's, they would make them a 1.
Yeah.
Because it's like a way to avoid certain arguments. But like debaters who do performance debate would always put performance judges the highest.
Yeah.
And then that would also lead to in my opinion, not my favorite debates to watch are KVK debates.
Okay.
Love me a K. Love critiques. But KVK specific can get kind of not the best, because then like I don't exactly want to hear the exact same ableism debate bad cards that you've been recycling for 10 years. It's just kind of like in those debates,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think sometimes it gets like a little weird because then it just becomes critical theory versus critical theory, and then we forget about the like lived realities of the people we're talking about. And then it's one person performing their identity and then someone reading identity politics of an identity they don't hold, and then it just kind of becomes like a lot. But I think like that also sometimes has to do with like how paradigms work and how like I would be more likely to get a judge that says they like performance debate, which changes how like the tournament can go.
Yeah. That
So I think it's like it's a whole can of worms.
true.
But yeah.
That's very true. Another thing that I have been kind of looking at is the what are we going to do, I think, as a community for certain like issues in the activity. So like I guess a better way to explain that is um what do like I don't think any tournament do we have any like protocols of what does happen when a coach or a judge or a student in the middle of the room has a panic attack or a suicidal thought or something like that, or anything of that nature. Like, what do we do
Yeah.
for those moments? How can we come together as a community to make sure that we're being as like accepting, I guess, and hopefully trying to help the people in that situation.
Yeah. I think one thing that would be helpful, especially for like really big tournaments, specifically like, um, well, okay. This is also like a gripe I've had about debate camps as well.
Okay.
Really, any tournament, I feel like, first of all, people who are involved with like tab should get some
Okay.
type of training having to do with like mental health, or at least something
Okay.
more having to do with like with training for children. Maybe that's just like a gripe I have with debate camps, but I think it would be helpful to I guess like, well, first of all, we need to establish a protocol. That's like the first step.
True.
It's just like come together, maybe like the NSDA, just like the committee. Don't exactly know what it is, and it just the committee get together, try to establish some type of protocol. So like if somebody is having a panic attack during a round, maybe like it's hard, you know? Cuz like
Yeah.
I've there was a round I had last year where I cried for my entire 2NR. I
Wow.
did not stop
Wow.
crying. And we didn't really know what to do because I was like, I can't get words out of my mouth because I'm crying.
Yeah.
And I think that like that kind of becomes part of an issue. But I think, yeah, I think it will require some thought. I think tournaments, especially with the NSDA, like as a whole, might want to invest. I don't know if we already do, but like having some type of specialist on adolescent mental health to
Yeah.
discuss.
I don't know if I don't think that we have that. I don't, but I could be wrong. And hopefully there are some people who will be able to help me answer that too. But I don't think that we have that, and that's definitely something that we need too.
Yeah, and I think
I
that would be really, really important.
I think I think an interesting fix could be for tournaments. This is just coming into my head right now. Is that one, there should just be like a staff member or something, or like a tournament, person, volunteer that does have that type of training. Even if it's
Yeah,
even if
definitely.
it's at the basic root, just like, yes, I know how to deal with kids who have panic attacks at this moment and stuff
Mhm.
like that. Some type of teacher, something of that nature would be best.
Yes, I agree.
And that person can have like a phone number, and that phone number can be spread just the same way that all the judges get the tournament director's phone number. Give that person's number to all of the people too, and then if you're having a panic attack, you're having it, boom, you text that number, that person runs to you and make sure you're okay or something like that. um
Yeah,
yeah, I think that could work.
yeah, and I also think there was another thing that was pretty popular in my sophomore year when I was debating, so like 2016,
Okay.
where a lot of and this is in my paradigm as well, that there was something where it was basically like, if you are in your round and you are feeling unsafe at any time, knock on the desk 3 times and I'll stop the round.
Oh, okay.
Which I think for me was like, hearing about that was really important to me, because like, I mean, it's like kind of like unknown thing. I was known to have like, I had relationships with people in the debate community. That's how it be sometimes.
It do
And
be like that.
kind of like, there were times where like I'd be scared that I was going to like debate someone who I dated if things had ended poorly, because like we're teenagers and dumb sometimes.
Yeah.
And for me, a lot of me was like, I'd love to do that, because like I did have issues with like, again, like with my PTSD stuff was from someone in the community. And it was like, that is life-changing for a lot of people, because like, side note, we don't talk about this stuff enough, and that's why like I have like a huge like dedication to like trying to create more open discourse when it comes to like a lot of the prevalence within like quote unquote bro culture in debate that can like
Yeah.
that has been shown to like really increase a lot of bad practices that disadvantage non-male debaters, where a lot of dudes will use the fact that they're good at debate to like get girls to sleep with them,
Okay.
which is really bad and a thing that's been going on for a long time. Sorry, that's just a side note.
No, that's fine. I just I feel like I haven't even heard that, so that's great.
Oh, really? Yeah. No, it's she's been around. That like, I mean,
back in my day, if you were a debater, that was just a guarantee that no one would sleep with you.
oh no, it's like, yeah, no, I think it's like, and it's become like more of a thing, and like I've been like trying to like quote unquote raise awareness of this kind of stuff. And a lot of people have.
Yeah.
I know that Nina Podishman wrote a really fantastic article for Victory Briefs about this kind of stuff. And like I've been trying to find a way to talk about it, but also like I do want to like be very open about this stuff, which can be kind of controversial. So it's hard to get like
true.
published when like it affects people in the community. But to me, it's like that is a huge part of debate in general these days, and it was like the quote unquote good debater syndrome that like is really important when it comes to mental health. This is on topic, because like, but like on like the safety, like on the safety knock thing that I thought was really important, that could also be used in a situation of like a panic attack, potentially. But like I think to create a better protocol, we would need like professionals to like who have had training, which I also think should be a thing added at all debate camp staffs, is having somebody who is trained. Because like I've had experiences.
I feel like that shouldn't even be a question.
Exactly.
I mean, if you could charge $7,000 per kid to come somewhere for a week, you definitely have enough money to hire. You can hire some like police officers, like everything.
Yeah, I think like, and that's one of the things. I mean, I am not a pro police for a lot of things, but I think that like at least having someone who's like a trained therapist.
Yeah, true.
Just like, because I mean, I've had experiences and I've heard experiences of people, especially at debate camps, which I think is a huge part of debate these days, in the dystopian place that we're heading towards, where everyone just becomes a carbon copy of what their coaches are telling them to say.
Yeah.
Especially, and how much money we can spend, which I think is just kind of what debate is now, a competition of how much money we can spend.
I challenge. I'm going to challenge that just a bit.
Really?
To remind I think the audience, depending on where you're listening from, like especially because I'm from the Midwest, so I assume a lot of my listeners are probably from the Midwest too. Like the culture in like Wisconsin is nowhere near what it is in California in terms of debate.
That's fair.
You have so many circuit tournaments near you that everybody just kind of does TOC debate and stuff, and that's no shade at TOC, but like TOC is basically the private school of debate, and it's like, hey, I can drop a good 40K and be successful this year. In any other culture, like in Wisconsin or any other smaller areas where, we still have a debate thing, but it's not, big travel, planes, hotels all the time.
Yeah.
It's just about, doing the activity. Like outside of the TOC spectrum, like in Wisconsin, like the debate is much slower. It's not really spreading. It's a lot more
Yeah.
chill and a lot of things like that. And I am still glad to see, some debaters, especially at places that aren't as influenced by the whole circuit debate style, like NSDA. Like those winners are usually still, pretty slow, nothing too crazy, throwing out crazy things and stuff like that, I guess. But yeah, the
Yeah.
scope is very different, depending on where you're from, East Coast, West Coast, and
Yeah,
Midwest.
that's very fair, and I don't really think of that often, because like I came from a school where like, I mean, I was lucky enough that like I was on financial aid,
Yeah,
so like when it came to like what my team did, I like was lucky enough that like I didn't have to pay full price.
exactly.
And then like that's why now I don't like the majority of the kids that I coach right now. Basically, if somebody wants me to coach them, and they like aren't able to pay, I'm just like, cool, no worries.
Yeah,
Because like I have a job on campus, and I was lucky enough to get a job on campus, and I think a lot of me is just kind of like I wasn't able to like have a private coach debated. Like I had Kate Tots, shout out Kate Tots, who was so nice and was just kind of at one point was just like, yeah, it's okay, I'll just be here. And it was like I wouldn't have been able to do that. But I think like one of the things that's just like on my opinion, when like you see kids on Facebook who are making GoFundMe's for like being part of like a $2,000 like debate prep program, and it's like these are super valuable things, but also like I don't know, I've got a lot of gripes with that.
It's tough because they're like, even like all those programs that they're looking for, there are a lot of those programs that are free,
Yeah.
like from the urban debate leagues and stuff. They're all like, everybody's holding camps. It's just that, the way they're regarded now is basically like, do you want the, the McDonald's of the camp, or do you want the In-N-Out?
It's on debate exclusively stem, as I said before, from can we just be nice to each other? Like, if I have to sit through another round where like two kids are just screaming at each other, I don't want to be there. I don't want to. Like, unless someone like severely deserves it and like deserves to be screamed at, fair. But I think that
comes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was gonna say, I think that comes from the bro culture you were talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, like that's why I was like, yeah.
No. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I mean, that's why, like, when I debated, I always tried, when I did, like, my narratives and performance stuff, I really wanted to, like, use my place in debate to make sure that people could feel welcome to share their stories as well. And I think, like, overall, when it comes to mental health in debate, it's all about trying to create awareness. So, like, if we're at a debate camp, and, like, making sure that all of the people who are coaching have been trained to deal with these type of things and know what to do, so that like camp and someone's not doing well, it kind of becomes like, okay, I'm talking to like an 18-year-old who went to TOC.
Yeah.
And like I don't know a lot of the protocols, and maybe people are trained, but like I know we have like stuff like mandatory reporting.
Yeah.
But I don't think that we should have to be putting everything in the hands of like me as a person. I am not qualified to be a therapist. And if I were working at a camp and a kid came up to me and was talking to me about suicidal ideation, I'm not qualified. And I can say, like, refer to like a hotline, but I think it'd be really good to have more trained staff at major debate places.
Yeah.
And maybe if the staff could go by volunteer basis, because I know it can be expensive, but I know there's people in the community who would be totally down to volunteer. And I think, like, in my opinion, that is one thing that the community definitely lacks.
True.
Because I know a great start was, I know at CHASA this year there were therapy dogs. And like,
Aw.
I think that and I think that is a good step in trying to make it more like making it more public, because I know, like, for me, like, what I know, disabilities and mental illness are a lot of the time are kind of forced to become private. And a lot of people, that's your prerogative. I think for me, I just thought, like, at this point, sure, it will maybe make me seem untrustworthy because my bipolar disorder, and that's just like what society views it to be. But I want to make people feel like they can be open and accept themselves.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what the debate can do, because as much as it can be very inaccessible. Like, I know what you were saying is like there are so many programs that are made that are here to help people. And the more that we're able to be open about this stuff, it will allow like everybody to feel open enough to talk about this, because like sometimes people at home aren't able to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
And there are so many people in debate who are using that as their way to like explore their own identity in a way that's like outside of their own community.
Very true. And I feel like that all that kind of a little bit speaks to I'm probably there's going to be, for those listening, a future episode and maybe some months from now, but I want to really talk more about the privatization of speech and debate too, and
Yeah.
how that affects the community as a whole. Like, it's I don't know, it's a tough thing. I think even just it's weird because we live in a capitalist society, or just in short, we live in a society, and we need to obviously make money to survive and live and stuff. So you gotta put out certain services and make things work. But then there are people who like I don't know, like there are people who take it to the next level, and they're like trying to be the next multi-millionaire speech and debate, and they're like, I'm only coaching people at $400 an hour, and
Yeah.
I guess if you have the money to pay for it, that's fine. But I don't know, like I promise you, I think there are so many like resources that are going to be much less expensive than that will still get you
Yeah.
the same benefit.
There's even the debate Discord where, like, okay, unpopular opinion, I don't like the debate Discord. I'm just gonna say it, mainly because it made me feel very uncomfortable when I debated.
You mean,
and sometimes people would
let me just for my sake and the audience sake, when you say Discord, are you speaking of the app Discord or the Discord?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a Discord server for speech and debate.
Okay.
And I mean, personally, like, there were a lot of times where like I'd find out people were live streaming my rounds and didn't ask me to.
Oh.
And like it just made me really uncomfortable. And there were just a lot of people, especially guys, it really seemed to reaffirm a lot of bro culture stuff. But it was also very helpful for a lot of people who came from smaller institutions. And like, I know that sometimes people would send me like, hey, can you look at this and tell me if you think it's like a decent ableism case, because like it's so expensive to get coaching.
Yeah.
And sometimes the people who are currently debating can be better coaches than people who are actually coaching.
True.
Like, I'll take that. There are people debating right now who are probably better coaches than I am. And like, that's fair. And I think that it's a good thing to like look out in our community and be like, oh, well, like, I wouldn't have started doing any type of performance debate if it weren't for a bunch of my friends junior year who were just like, look at this case. It's called sick woman theory. You should look at it.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's where a lot of us in the community, I mean, if we're going to start idolizing 17-year-olds for what they've done and giving them the level of clout that they have, at least like we can look at it as a way to like go within our community and like look at on the Discord, like I would judge like practice rounds.
Yeah.
And I think, like, in my opinion, the community is pretty toxic. And
Very.
like, we knew that. But I think that there are also people within the community who are debating who are helpful people and good people. There are good people in this activity. They exist.
Yeah. I think
like I think to me, I think that's a good thing, especially when it comes to like how expensive private coaching can be. That like before, because it's going to be a while until we're able to like solve that epidemic.
Yeah.
So like in the meantime, to me, I feel like that can be like a viable resource.
Very.
And also judges RFDs. Fantastic.
Yes, I tell that to a lot of students to remember to look at like RFDs and stuff and all of that because it's very
Yeah.
important and it's a part of that coaching process. Like, you know, if you can figure out what the judges are going to say, then you'll figure out how to get better and stuff like that.
Yeah. Ask
Yeah,
questions.
very much so. And I like as soon as you said this one part, I just had to write it down because man, like I don't know where it came from. I don't really remember this, you know, in my day, but like I said, Wisconsin is much different than California. But like we
Mm-hmm.
idolize like the speech and debaters so much, and it's weird. Like it's actually weird to
Yeah.
me. Like I'm totally not afraid to call like there are companies that I like and I'm not afraid to call any company out on their crap. Like I think that the idea of ranking speech and debaters is problematic, so problematic.
Yeah.
Like what
And I became obsessed with it when I was
like these
debating.
aren't NBA players that are getting paid millions. These are kids who are just trying to do an activity that can basically make them better public speakers. And you got companies
Yeah.
like 3P Speech who post publicly like here are the best orators in the country. And oh no, you're ranked number 300. Better step up your game. And the only way to step up your game is to pay us $50 an hour by signing up
Mm-hmm.
for our online coaching. And I'm like, wow, like I am that is so problematic. Very.
Yeah. And I remember my dad would like check rankings on NSDA and be like, look at you, Katie, like you're doing great. Or would be like, my dad's a cool cat. He would be like, oh, this person you're dating, you're ranked. And I was like, hell yeah. But like, I'm just gonna say, and to anybody listening who remembers me from this one round I have online where I talked about witchcraft, if one more sophomore boy goes up to me and asks me if I'm witch girl, I will scream.
Oh my gosh.
Because people would do that. There was someone, like a person who like shook my hand after a round and was like, it was an honor. And I was like, sir, I am 17. I don't know calculus. For a while, I forgot that 0.1 is smaller than 0.5. Not somebody that should have enough clout that you know me like by name from my speech code. That is no.
Yeah.
And like it made me so uncomfortable. And like I think but also like as like a woman in debate, I think like a lot of the time it would come from people where like it was weird because like a lot of the time this stuff affects mainly guys, but like it was very prevalent with a lot of like non-male, like cis dudes.
Yeah.
Where like people would start to like well honestly like the whole rankings thing, like that was a lot of like the good debater syndrome stuff where it was like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to the number one ranked debater in the country.
Yeah.
And then like you put on your debater goggles and you think that someone's better than they are as a person because they're ranked super highly. And then some part of you feels like I should feel like that I'm lucky because this 17-year-old likes me. And I'm going to keep emphasizing, these are children.
Yeah. Yeah.
Children. Ugh. Like, I don't understand why, like, even, like, adults in the community would know me by name. And I was like,
yeah.
Yes, you've seen me in a round online that I definitely lost. And it's like, it's so uncomfortable. Like, I've thought about it, and I'm like, over 6,000 people have seen me debate online. Why?
That's...
Why?
Oh, man. That's crazy. That's viral in speech and debate terms. 6,000.
Oh, yeah. And I don't enjoy that, because that's, like, accumulation of a bunch of the rounds that I've had online, which, like, I was so happy to put online, mainly because, like, I would have... Well, first of all, the witch round was hilarious.
Yeah.
Because Anna Myers annihilated me and was so smart in all of her arguments. And it was, and now I'm like, I don't want anyone watching this round, but I want people who want to get into performance debate, especially like as a white person who like read performance debate. If there are like other debaters who are like, yeah, I'm white, but I want to read like this identity politics, I'm like, watch it.
This is exactly...
Watch the fact that you are going to...
Yeah. No, this is exactly why I think you should have just did DI And
Yeah, you're not wrong. Honestly, speech, like I'm like kind of doing college debate right now.
Awesome.
And it's Parley.
Okay.
And I'm kind of at a point in my life where I'm like, what if I just talked about birds aren't real?
You know they're not, right?
Hot take.
They're definitely not real.
Oh, I made a whole presentation on it for my so like I play softball for my college, and we had a PowerPoint party where we just made PowerPoints and whatever we wanted, and I did mine on birds aren't real.
That is great.
Because I have a shirt. And it was really fun.
For all of my people over 30 listening, there's a meme about how birds aren't real. Look it up. You'll get
Government
yourself
drones,
a laugh.
baby. Birdsaren'treal.com.
Oh man, that's awesome. Well, I want to just
fun.
let the audience know that I hope you're enjoying the show so far. But we're actually gonna take a quick break so we can hear a word from our sponsors. If you want to join in the conversation, feel free to leave a comment down below, whether you're listening on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever, or you can DM me on Instagram at the Forensics Guy. I would say DM me on my TikTok, but I don't know how to open my TikTok things.
Oh God,
my messages, like, they don't open. It's weird. I'm confused. But yeah, whatever. Feel free to leave a comment or DM me wherever if you want to get into the conversation. So yeah, stay tuned, everybody, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you got to enjoy the sponsor reading, which is probably just me talking about myself. But yeah, we're back to the episode, and we left off talking about a lot of things, honestly. But it's been really awesome to have Katie be with us to talk about the crisis of mental health in the community, and how we can fix that, and we looked at kind of coming from that a few different ways. I think there's so many things that we forget that are tied to mental health, from organizations fetishizing children, basically, to bro culture, to everything, and it's very, very interesting. So back with Katie Raphaelson, and I want to go on to talking about depression. I think that we kind of hit like stuff like panic attacks and some like anxiety things and rounds, and also just general, breakdowns and things of that nature. Stuff that's a little bit more quicker, if that makes sense. It's like more acute, I guess. But like depression is something that obviously is more long term, and it's the effects of it are constant. And I want to get into that because I'm interested in just learning a little bit more about how people can deal with depression, I think, and having that conversation now. Because I don't think I got to answer this at the beginning, but for me, for most people who know me, I struggle with panic disorder. And it's been a very unfortunate storm in my life. But one of the things that I can say, if there's anything that I guess I'm happy about, is that when it comes to panic disorder and depression, I really don't think I was dealing with that in high school. Like, I didn't really have panic attacks or anything, and it wasn't noticeable. So I never had to have the unfortunate event of me, I don't know, in a round doing my poetry piece, and then a panic attack happens. I would have freaked out and I had no idea what to do. It's a world, and I'm not really sure where to go with that. So let's look at depression, and what I don't know, I guess for the audience, have you struggled with depression? And for those who are listening that may be struggling with depression, what are things that you do or did do maybe as a competitor that might have helped you, have a more calm mind, or, try to be better during competitions and stuff?
Yeah. So I dealt with I've dealt with depression for a really long time, mainly starting so my junior year of high school. I had basically was in a relationship for a year with someone from the community, got out of the relationship, and it was not a good relationship. I spiraled into a really bad depression. I couldn't go to school anymore, and I went to partial hospitalization, which was PHP, which is just kind of like intensive. It's like daycare, but like for really depressed kids.
Oh, wow.
So it was like day preschool, but for kids who were like not okay. So yeah, it was a time. Ate a lot of Cheerios. And
Were they Honey Nut Cheerios?
basically, yes, they were.
Okay, because those are the best.
The-
Actually, the best Cheerios. I'm so off topic, but actually, the best Cheerios are the ones that are like the frosted ones in the blue box.
That's valid. I am a strong fan of a Honey Nut Cheerio. It was the only sugar they'd let us have. So, but yeah, so I dealt with depression. It was really bad, especially my junior year. Also because like being in the community with a lot of people who had hurt me,
Yeah.
was bad because like I had to get really used to it. Of like being in a place where like I was not happy, and a lot of that would manifest in and if my coaches are on the off chance listening to this, I would almost monthly decide that I was quitting debate.
Yeah.
And it was a thing where they would just be like, Katie, you're not quitting. And I was like, I'm quitting this time. I never did. I love debate. But I was always like, I think one of the main things about depression is losing interest in things that you love.
Yes.
And I would just kind of decide, no, I hate debate. And like, yeah, I think deep down, we all love, like people who do debate this long, we love debate. But also debate kind of sucks sometimes.
Yes.
And it was always like, I hate debate. But I'd always be like, haha. So then when I realized, so I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder unspecified my junior year. And what I learned was a lot of the time I would either be so depressed that I'd say I'm never doing debate again and I'd stop going to tournaments. But then I'd also the next week decide I was cutting 5 apps. So yeah, because bipolar disorder has like the depression and also mania.
Yeah.
Which is what would make me like super productive, and I'd be like, I'm cutting 1 million card files, and I was just kind of like typing furiously in coffee shops, and that was pretty difficult. And I remember like going to a debate camp after coming from the hospital and was severely depressed and was not doing all right. And I think that like for me, what got me through all of it were like what was like all of my friends that I'd had in the community, from people who were like my coaches, Kate Tots, my Midwestern queen, but also like people that I'd met through debate just like randomly on Facebook. And I remember I was in one of my darkest times and I was really not okay. And the people who like were both 2 people that I'd met in debate. I would not have gone to partial hospitalization if it wasn't for a friend who was in the community who told me you should go to this program.
Wow.
And that to me really speaks to like how debate impacted my life in such like a weird but like definitely positive way.
Yeah.
Because like it can be difficult to make friends in the community, but also like we're all nerds.
We are.
Like if anybody who's like listening to this feels like they're really struggling to make friends here, I always felt like I was just like a freaking loser in high school. But like everyone in debate is like that. We're all like this. And it's really, to me, it was just kind of like I started reaching out to people. And like I was on like a meme page and I'd make memes and then people would be like, oh my gosh. And then like, or like people at tournaments, I'd always make sure to be really friendly to my opponents.
Yeah.
Mainly because like, I don't know, it's nice to be nice to people. And NSDA, my coach would do a fun thing where it was like, you need to take a selfie with at least 10 people all from different states. And then we just kind of make friends with people.
That's awesome.
And it was really nice. And I think that was a really huge part of me being able to cope with my depression. And also, but I think like a big part of debate and with depression is that like we do as a community need to start like, first of all, I'll go back to like when it comes to camps and tournaments, need to start understanding what to do with debaters who have depression.
Yeah.
Like I remember I did a performance, I read a poem where I talked about suicidal ideation. And like someone reported me to the camp and I had to have like a discussion. And it was after I had gone through all my stuff, and I was like chilling. It was just like a reflective poem. And for any of my fellow mentally ill people out here who have ever been reported to somebody in like a terrifying way, wasn't fun for me.
True.
And I think we need to start understanding like how to deal with this stuff in a way that is like, I don't know, like friendly, I guess, or just like more prioritizing helping the people in a way that is not like, oh, we're panicking because this person mentioned this thing to me.
True.
But I think also like we need to, that just goes back to having qualified people places, because like teenagers shouldn't have to be therapists. I remember like I'd text my therapist, and like I'm like lucky enough that I have a therapist and that I was able to text her, and that like my parents were able to drive out to the Long Beach tournament to sit with me.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big thing that like would help me with my depression and debate. But like as a competitor, it's very hard because a lot of people in debate present themselves in a way that like it feels like, oh, everybody else here is chilling except for me.
Yeah.
Everybody else here feels like super neurotypical. And like, yeah, a lot of people that I met from debate, like a lot of people don't really struggle with mental illness.
Yeah.
And the people that do, like we were always forming our own little like friend groups because we were all struggling. And I think a lot of that has to do with being able to like be open with our identities to people. And that's why I felt so like an example of this. So I was lucky enough to speak at a gala for AIM Youth Mental Health.
Okay.
To talk about my experience with suicide and what was helpful. And it was like for a program. And a lot of people came up to me afterwards and were telling me their stories. And I think that's a really big part of like why I was so dedicated to talking about mental health and debate when I debated, was because people would come up to me afterwards and be like, hey, I go through a lot of the same things. And I think that's one of the reasons where like when I see people who read ableism arguments for strategic value, I'm just kind of like, nobody read these like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
People would read it and it was really just for like a performative aspect. People didn't read like kritiks that much until like last year, and now everyone reads it.
True.
And it used to be such like, there's a reason why at one point like I had this at one school's entire like ableism K back files, because they just recycled the same cards. Because like shout out to debate that no one really seems to care about ableism and doesn't really seem to treat it very with like a lot of like respect.
Wow.
So I just hit the exact same arguments every round, to the point where like I'd memorized the authors.
Yeah, you're
like, oh,
I know how to
you're
rebut
hitting
to
me with
this.
yeah, and I was like, oh, you're hitting me with the ableism K is bad for debate. Cool. You gonna read the actual evidence, or like what's going on?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it is like, that's just, I think with depression.
Yeah.
Yeah, like about the
hello?
community
Oh, okay.
being vocal about it. I think that also goes back to like our personal lives within the debate community, and how like it is such a prevalent part of like how debate functions for us, I guess.
True.
That like it's something we need to talk about more. So yeah, that's how I feel about depression and debate. Really sucks, and I think a lot of us are struggling, but it's really hard to talk about.
I definitely agree with that. And I think as I'm always, even though I'm having these conversations, I'm always trying to think about more immediate solutions, especially for any adults that are listening that can help make some changes in their own community. I think that an idea is that we need to have, like, speech and debate is a large community. Like, it's like we don't talk about it as much, like how large we really are. Like, I mean, the NSDA national tournament is like actually the largest, like what do they call it? I think by definition it's the largest competitive like high school activity in the like US or world or something. I don't know. It's like,
yeah, I don't know, but that seems fair.
But either way, we can say that like it's big. And in every single big community, there's always micro communities that should be thriving in order to make the entire community succeed. You know, just how in a high school of 6,000 kids, you have like there's a, you know, psychology club, a GSA club or Queer and Ally Club,
Yeah.
Q&A, depending on whatever you call it. And then there's like maybe a depression club. I know every school doesn't have one of those, but that's totally something that more schools should have,
Yeah. And I mean, I tried to start that at my high school. I had a wellness club
yeah.
about like doing like yoga and stuff. And it was me trying to use the stuff that I learned at partial hospitalization. But sadly, 3 people joined, so it never became a club.
I was gonna say
because we did not
3
have
is totally
snacks.
enough, but I guess not for your school probably.
Yeah, that's kind of, yeah, a lot of the time that was just a problem with my high school's administration. But that's why another thing that I feel like would be a really good immediate solution would be having tournaments. Like, well, obviously diversity and debate, huge problem.
Yeah.
And I think increasing diversity within like tab and having people who have had experience with depression, having more queer individuals, having more people of color in these groups allows us to understand, especially like with intersections of identity. So like,
I agree.
If we have like people of color who are also like have experienced things with depression, definitely amazing thing, because like there are so many different intersections of how identity functions that like having more people who understand these things allows us to make the community, at least people, be able to like see themselves, obviously.
For those who remember from our episode in like October when we had Ernest Chomiki on, we talked a little bit about that, about finding a way to change the way the tab rooms look in order to promote diversity. Specifically in that episode, we were talking about African American students, but yeah, like having, if we like, to me, a tab room should look the way an ideal, like an ideal board would look for a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Yes, if you have a really great board for a nonprofit, you should have, like an old white guy, a young black lesbian woman, a person with a mental disability, maybe another person who's Mexican, and all of these different things culminated together to be able to have an array of opinions that can come together to shape whatever the thing is that they're changing, and in this case it'd be speech and debate.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I could totally see that. That would be really awesome, actually. And the I guess like it's kind of weird because like tab as a whole, they usually have so many different roles. Like whenever I used to think of tab, I only think of people who are entering scores in. But like there's all these other people, from the people who are walking around and make sure the food is taken care of, or the people who are collecting ballots at this room, or the people who are walking around and helping, playing security or whatever. Like those are all people that are affiliated with the tab room, and being able to have a bunch of different people in a diverse array will help everything, because you'll be able to have more people that look either like you or look as closer to you as possible, being able to help in the community, from security to everything. Yes, that's I think that's really interesting. And I feel like we got to cover a lot, and this was a very, very insightful conversation. For everyone who is listening, thank you so much for listening. It's just been a true honor to have Katie on here and talk so much about mental health, and something that isn't talked about a lot. And as you all know, as I said when I first started this podcast, I'm trying to create more conversations. There's so many things we don't talk about in the community. It's like hell, it's too taboo for the tab room, as you might say. And I want to try to make those discussions happen more honestly and more freely. So yeah, thank you so much, Katie, for being on. And
of course.
yeah, like I said, it's been an honor. So for everybody who is listening, as you know, as I usually say, make sure you share this podcast with your best friend, your, I don't know, girlfriend, whoever like loves speech and debate, and try to get them to yeah, listen to this. And if they're not in the community, tell them to be in the community. If you want to share this with somebody who's not in the community, tell them to go to their first tournament and judge. They'll love it, and then they'll be addicted just like we are. So,
Yeah.
yeah, feel free to give this a 5-star on iTunes. You can find this on iTunes and Spotify and Stitcher and all those other places. And that's pretty much it. So thank you all for listening, and I will see you all later. Peace out.